bit, or the speaker, because it's hitting me in the back, and I'm going to slide over here just a little bit. Now I do hope that you can see the screen, because I am going to go through some information here that I think is important. So if you have to adjust, or if I get to a point where you are really interested, just move over. But I do hope that you are able to see and understand what I have to present, because right now I'm hoping to give you the facts, and then you can make a decision. That's what God gave us. He gave us the ability to understand and to be able to make choices, and ultimately our liberty is about that, about being able to make our own choices, and we can't do that without truth, without evidence. And so what's the opposite of evidence?
Lie.
Propaganda, right?
The media.
So if all you're listening to is propaganda, then what choice do you have? You only have a choice of whether you're going to believe the propaganda or not. So I'm trying to reverse that by giving you truth, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here, and I accept any challenge that anybody wants to give me on the material that I'm going to present to you, because I think that is warranted. I think if you're like, wait a minute, what about this? Then when we get discussing and having questions here, I want to hear those. If you think that I'm talking out the side of my mouth, then let me know, and I'll defend myself, or I'll admit that I was wrong. All right. So let me get in here. Before we get going, I want to get going, I really want to cover a certain topic and a word. But before I do that, I'm going to ask a question. Who's heard me speak before? Okay, so that's awesome. By far the majority of you have not heard me speak before. And so if I cover, those who raised your hand, if I cover some material that I've covered in another town hall, forgive me, this is like our 200th town hall. And I'm not exaggerating that, we stopped counting. So,
that's good.
But we've had these town halls just like this all over the state for the last year and a half. So, and this material that I'm going to be showing you, most of those town halls, I've in one way or the other presented this. But before we move on, Bob, can you hear me okay back there? Can you hear me okay over there? All right. Yeah.
Are you turned on? Yeah.
Wendy, I am not.
No wonder.
So we do record these, so that the FBI has lots of good evidence when we're done. Now, actually, so we can make it live on the website, so you can go back and refer your friends to it and say, hey, this is what happened. Okay. Question. What is liberty? Seems so simple, right? I mean, I can answer that. I'm getting this really back. Pull that a little bit more. I apologize. I want to be back here so you can see it. There I go, that's a little better. So what is liberty? It does seem simple. Anybody want to give it a shot? Defining it?
Freedom to make your own choices and live your own life the way you want to.
Okay, freedom to make your own choices and live your own life the way you want to. I think that's pretty close, right? Go ahead.
Release from bondage.
Release from bondage. Okay?
Freedom to do what you want to be able to do.
To be able to freedom to be able to do what you want to be able to do, or whatever. I think I said. Go ahead.
Liberty is the ability to do what you want as long as it doesn't hurt somebody else.
Yes. That is, so all of you are right. I was just looking for that last little bit. Liberty is the ability to do whatever you want as long as you do not infringe upon another person's rights. Now, You might think, well, that's a great definition, Ammon. I'm glad you made it up, and now you can do your entire presentation on that. But I'm going to back it up with a little bit of some authority here. We have some great founders of this country that also defined liberty. They were more articulate than me, but let's go to Thomas Paine. He said, liberty is the power to do everything that does not interfere with the rights of others. Thus, the exercise of the natural rights of every individual has no limits, save those that assure to other members of society the enjoyment of the same right. Is that not him saying the exact same thing? That liberty is the ability to do whatever you want as long as you're not infringing upon another person's right? What about Thomas Jefferson? He has a little bit of authority, right? Rightful liberty is unobstructed action according to our will within limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others. I do not add within the limits of the law, because law is often but the tyrant's will, and always so when it violates the rights of the individual. So right there, right? Rightful liberty is unobstructed action according to our will within limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others. So can we accept that liberty is the ability to do whatever you want as long as you're not infringing upon somebody else's rights? Does anybody have an objection to that? Because you do. You have an objection to that?
A clarification, or I'd like to add to it.
Okay, go ahead.
Liberty is a practice, is a right, is to practice our God-given inalienable rights without fear of retribution from the unlawful.
Okay? I agree with that. I agree with that. Now let's apply this to real life, all right? Because it's really easy to talk about this and define it. But let's apply it to real life. And the reason why I think it's so important that we apply this to our lives, I'm going to attempt to do this here, is because if once we understand the definition of liberty and understand how it applies to our lives, then we can identify when it's being taken and also who is taking it. So let's do this. Let's look at this. So apply the definition to freedom of worship. So to be able to worship whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want, as long as you're not infringing upon somebody else's rights. Right? Is that not freedom? Should we have that freedom? Yes. That right has been given to us by God, right? To be able to worship. He wants us to make a decision whether we're going to worship Him or not. But that's our decision. And the laws and our nation should protect that right. Does that make sense? So what about the right?
It also protect those of us that don't want to believe in it.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's not.
So it shouldn't be crammed down our throats because we don't believe in it.
But that's freedom. That's freedom, right? Like if you decide to believe something, even though it's completely contrary to everybody's belief in the room, should we not all protect her right? That's right. Okay, what about freedom to freedom of property? So let's apply that to be able to do whatever you want with your property as long as you're not infringing upon your neighbor's rights or somebody else's rights. Right? Are we losing that freedom? Yeah. We're losing it on many levels. All the way from our small little municipalities, our counties, our state, our federal government. They're telling us how to control our own property. They're limiting what we want to do with our property. And it's not based upon the rights of others. It's not based upon our neighbor's rights. And so I don't have the freedom to do whatever I want with my property if I'm infringing upon my neighbor's rights. But I should be able to have the freedom to do whatever I want with my property as long as I'm not infringing upon my neighbor's rights. So we could talk about the freedom to publish thoughts, which in the Constitution would be the freedom of the press. Freedom to travel, to go wherever you want as long as you're not infringing upon somebody else's right. Freedom to trade. I like this one because I've been in business. I'm an entrepreneur. So to be able to trade with whoever I want, with whatever I want, as long as I'm not infringing upon somebody's right. So I can't steal something and then go trade it. That's not freedom. Or I can't force somebody to trade me. Or I can't force somebody to pay me something or to give me something at my price. It has to be a willing buyer, willing seller. And that is free trade. That's what freedom is, right? So we're applying this. Do we see where that is also being infringed upon? And who is doing that? We can now identify, oh, wait a minute. That's an infringement upon my rights, upon freedom. Freedom to educate. This is just a small list. Freedom to speak out. These are just, this is certainly not an entire, not even close to an entire list. But each man and woman should be able to do whatever he or she wants as long as they are not infringing upon the rights of another person. Now, to go into what you emphasized, this is a founding document that we call the Declaration of Independence, kind of an important document that we know about in this country. And there's a paragraph that says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So where does the right to liberty come from? It comes from God. And we know in the next paragraph it says that man instituted governments to protect these rights. And then it goes on in the next paragraph, says if government's not protecting these rights, then the people have a right to set up new guards, to alter or abolish. So this is our founding documents. We didn't make this up. This is what we based our nation upon. It was based upon righteous principles of freedom and rights that came from our Creator. All right. So with that being said, I'm gonna play a video, and again, I hope everybody can. I'm hoping the sound is good and everything's gonna work right. Raise your hand if you can't hear it back there. Idaho, to me, represents the best of what America was. Idaho was a conservative state with traditional family values, full of people of faith who carried guns, loved the Constitution, helped each other, and built businesses by the sweat of their own brow. Idaho is sliding down the path and ceasing to be the Idaho that we love. I don't want that to happen. And so I'm announcing now that I will be running as governor for the great state of Idaho. As governor, I will be implementing a plan and a platform to keep Idaho, Idaho. The Keep Idaho, Idaho plan will improve life, bring prosperity, empower and protect families, and secure the opportunity for happiness to every person living within the beautiful state of Idaho. I know how to win. My record and history demonstrates that I am willing to fight to the very end. Now it's your choice. May God bless the people of Idaho. May we live up to these blessings. May we keep Idaho a bastion of freedom and prosperity for years to come. May we be an example to the world of how to be free, of how to act, how to treat each other. And together, all of us together, may we keep Idaho, Idaho. Thank you, my friends. Thank you. How does that sound? You want to keep Idaho, Idaho? I know I do. I certainly do. And I know that we have a battle on our hands, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. Now, if you Googled my name, you're going to find all kinds of surprises. And so I really don't like going, Billy knows that I don't like going through this part, because I just feel like it shouldn't be about me. But I also have to correct the narrative. Like I have to, show that Google and CNN and all those guys are networks are incorrect. I Googled my name the other day, and I'm like, man, I don't know who this guy is, but I don't like him. He seems like a jerk, you know. So I just want to quickly go through my background so you can know what makes me tick, where I came from. By their fruits you shall know them, right? I grew up on a ranch in southern Nevada, in a very arid part of the country, actually. In fact, they say Nevada is just a place you fly over. But it's my home. It's where I grew up. I have a love for Nevada. I don't want to live there anymore, but I have a great love for Nevada. There's my parents, Cliven and Carol Bundy. I'm grateful for them and the way that they raised my brothers and sisters. They taught me right from wrong. They taught me how I should act. They taught me when I should compromise and when I shouldn't compromise. And I'm grateful for that. Here's a picture of the ranch, and you'll see there's not a whole lot of vegetation there, but it is beautiful in its own right. And here's another picture there. This is the greenest part of the ranch right here. But believe it or not, you'll see there's lots of grass underneath those little the brush there, and they'll eat everything in this picture. They'll eat the Joshua trees. They have pears on them. They'll grow pears, and they'll eat those. They'll get fat on those. They'll eat all the little grass, and then once the grass is gone, they'll eat the shrub, and then they'll even eat this chaparral right here if they get really desperate. Here's a bull. You'll notice that on the corner, on the horn there, it's got some hair on it. Probably just got done hooking a horse, because they are pretty rank. They have to live out there and survive out there, and so they're not people friendly. This is my little brother. This is how I grew up. I did this constantly growing up. You see the stockade corral there. My little sister getting off the bus. She's met by a calf and 4 dogs. This calf, the mother got hit on the road, and my dad went and did an emergency C-section. Mother died. He saved the calf, and we bottle fed it. And it became a really nice bull. But it was so friendly that it was constantly trying to go in the house, and my dad had fun to get rid of him. But before that, he would go out in the field at night, lay down, and then the sheep and the dogs would all lay down in one big pile. And it was the strangest thing. It's just like Boise. They're having an identity crisis over there. I do say that in Boise too, by the way. Before I left the ranch, I actually was a fairly young man. My dad came to me and he says, the ranch isn't big enough for the both of you, both of us. And he wasn't trying to be mean, but he was just telling me that this ranch doesn't produce enough living for all of his children. And he had a bunch of them, and I was in the middle of us. And he was telling me, very clearly that most likely you're going to have to go make a living somewhere else other than this ranch. And so even though that was hard, I didn't want it, and I always thought, well, maybe I'll be the one he picks to run the ranch, that didn't happen. And I had to go and make a living another way. But before that, I went, and when I was 19 years old, I went and served 2 years on an LDS mission. And I went to Minnesota. And this was a really sacred time for me. And it still today refines who I am, because I was able to go out there and just focus and try to learn who the Lord was and do my best to teach others, because one of the best ways to learn is by teaching, right? And what more than anything that happened during that time, and there was a lot of refinement. I was coming off the ranch, and now I'm wearing a white shirt and tie, and speaking to people, and all that hard work was turned into like reading and talking and all of those things, kind of like now. And but I came away with the determination that I was going, no matter what I did in my life, I was going to make sure that the Lord was okay with it. That the Lord had to be okay with it, because I wanted to do what He wanted me to do above all other things. And that's what that time gave me. And I came home, got back to Lyfe. I went to a little college in southern Utah, Cedar City, Utah, Southern Utah University. And I actually started my business there and kept wondering, like, why am I here? Like, I had pretty much done with school, and I was in this little town trying to, build this business that really wasn't made for a little town. It was I'll talk about it a little bit, but it was a commercial fleet maintenance company. But I knew I was supposed to stay there until I felt like I could leave. And after several years, like 6 years, I finally figured out why I needed to stay there. Because I met my wife, Lisa. And we got married, and then just a few months later, we left and went down to Phoenix area, and I took my business down there, and we started building a life there. And we had 6 children there, 3 boys, 3 girls. There now, my oldest is 20 years old. She just turned 20. She's married, lives in Moscow, and they're expecting their first. And then my youngest is 7 years old, and I've got all in between. So I'm in the mix of it. Like I am right now in the middle of raising children. My daughter just turned 20, but just a few weeks ago I had 4 teenagers. So in Arizona, I took my business down there and started to really go to work and started to build this business. And I ended up being one of the largest private fleet maintenance companies in Arizona. And so I've hired hundreds of people, dealt with millions of dollars of budgets. I've had to build this from scratch, so all the procedures, all the policies, all the, everything, I had to do it from scratch. And we ended up, and I run that business for 21 years and then ended up selling it. And so why do I tell you this? Because I want you to see the administrative side of me, the ability to, manage people and be able to get them going in the same direction. Thank you. So to give you confidence that I can do that, and I have done that, and I understand what it takes to communicate with a whole bunch of people, even new ideas, and make them beneficial for somebody else, even to the point where you can actually sell and market and sell them. But that's not all. When I was about 17 years in business, the entire time I was in business, I could see that industry was really desperately needing technology, software. And because the entire time I was in business, I was looking for software that was going to help my business. And I couldn't find it. And when I was first started my business, I tried to make a software. I was unsuccessful, just didn't have the resources and the ability to do it. So about year 17, I decided that I was going to build a software for this industry. And I put a team together and had the resources, and it took us almost 4 years to do it. And we built, this. We worked with our customers because they knew what we were doing. We worked with our vendors, my technicians, office staff, all of that, and we built this really amazing software. And we tested it in the shop. I made it just really good and fine-tuned it. And then it worked so well in our shop that we began to sell it to other shops. And now it's one of the leading fleet maintenance shop management softwares in North America. And I have since sold that as well. I sold both of those businesses, one in 2018 and one in 2019. Now, we're going to talk about Idaho, but there's one more piece that I just need you to understand. It's very difficult to communicate because so much happened. But life was really, really good at this time. I mean, I was like at the pinnacle of, my career, if you will. I had great employees, great customers, great business. I was making good money. And I actually had such good employees that I actually had time. So it was the first time in my life that I had both time and money. Because usually if you have time, you have no money. And if you have money, you have no time. And I was at that time, pondering and thinking, what would the Lord want me to do with my extra time and resources? And then something happened that I never thought would happen again. I never thought would happen in this country. And that was the federal government came down upon my father's ranch in 2014. And they sent an army of federal agents, 213 armed federal agents. And the best way to describe it was, it was like our little valley was like a scene out of the Hollywood movie Red Dawn, with helicopters, AMRAAMs, guards, and they began to destroy my father's ranch. They ended up killing about 60 head of cattle. Much of them were from helicopters, just shooting them from helicopters. They were burying them in mass graves just out in the desert. They were destroying the water infrastructure that my family had developed. It took over the last 100 years, and they were stopping us by pointing guns at us if we even stepped off the road. They actually said that this will mean a lot to you, a lot more to you up here than most places, but they said if we resisted in any way, this would be another Waco or Ruby Ridge. And then in a later statement, they said they will kill you. This was a Bureau of Land Management agent. And so I went, I had this good life, and I knew that I had to go and help my father. I had to go and respond and use the resources and the ability to communicate to help my father. And I went up there and pretty much lived up there for several months while all of this was going on. Now, it didn't last that long, but what happened was as soon as, what ultimately happened is that the escalation of force got so intense, and we were able to capture it on video and distribute it throughout the United States, throughout the world actually, that the people of this country were not okay with what their government was doing, and they began to respond. First by the tens, and then hundreds, and then thousands. And they knew that if they didn't back away, that there would be tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands. And so they ended up backing away, and I saw something that was a miracle. I experienced a miracle. And I saw that the true way rights are preserved and the rights are maintained, because we've been duped into believing that the rights are maintained in the ballot box and then or the courtroom. And I'm going to address that a little bit. That's not. There's other things that go on there that are important, but rights are maintained by claiming, using, and defending them.
That's right.
And if you don't have the ability to defend them yourselves, then you need to have a community of people that will come around you. And look at anywhere in history and challenge and check what I'm saying. Have wars been won or people's rights been protected because we voted the right person in? No, they've been protected because people who are willing to defend what is right come together and do that. So anyway, we're going to talk about that because I don't want you to be confused, because I certainly am running for governor. So, but I saw something there that was amazing. In fact, I'm going to show you one picture. I don't always show this, and I do got to get into this other material, but I think this is amazing. When they this, you might look familiar, right? This is us basically down there facing them, saying, "Look, we're unarmed, but we're gonna stand. You can kill us if you want, but we're not going anywhere. You're leaving." Now, this is another thing. This is when they were leaving. Now, this is only about, if you can see right here, you can see that that's the freeway. This line of cars went all the way up to the freeway. There was 107 federal vehicles. And they left all within an hour because the people gave them an ultimatum. And they decided to take that ultimatum and leave.
Yeah.
And so... Thank you. I really began to question, like, all these things that I thought I knew about, rights and about, securing them, because I saw that it got to the point where a group of people who were really just criminals was going to take by the force of the barrel of a gun, no matter what. And that the people coming together is what stopped them. And so I believe that we're going to see this again. So I believe that what happened to us and why it happened to us was to wake us up and other people up in time enough that we can start preparing and unifying people just like here so that we can come together and secure our liberties and not lose them. Because there are great forces out there that are doing many, many powerful things. I'm going to answer your question, but in the end, to take our liberties. Now, I got one more video here I'm going to show because you may, well, again, then you know, or you might not know, but right after this is when I moved to Idaho, 2015. And I actually moved to Idaho thinking that I was going to get some peace.
Yeah.
I mean, I really did. I wanted to come, I wanted to get my children, the city had grown up around the area we were at. I wanted to get them out of the city. I wanted to get in a little community like I grew up in. And I also was looking to get peace from all of the interviews and all of the national attention that we were getting, and I just wanted to raise my family. That was all I wanted to do. And then I come to Idaho, and I moved to Emmett, Idaho, and I end up being not, just a little over 2 hours away from the Hammond family. You may not know who the Hammond family is, but it's another ranching family in Oregon. The federal government was doing the same thing to them, and I tried to resist going and getting involved in that. But ultimately, the Lord strongly put it on my heart that it wasn't not only that I not only should do it, but it was my duty and obligation, and that I'd be held accountable if I did not go and help this family. And so I did. And it ended up being that through all of that, my father, my brothers, many friends, all end up getting thrown in prison, federal prison. And we were in there for 2 years, and never once were we ever convicted of a crime. Never once were we convicted of even a misdemeanor. We were in there the entire time. After 2 major federal trials, one in Oregon where we beat them on all charges, and then another one in Nevada, where it got so messy with the government, they finally had to dismiss the case with prejudice. We walked out of those federal prisons after the federal government spent nearly $100 million prosecuting my family. We walked out of those prisons without even a misdemeanor and went back home to our families. It was a terrible time. Also, the President Trump, I'm going to show you a picture here, ended up, this is the Hammond family, and President Trump, as you may or may not know, ended up pardoning the Hammond family. And President Trump only pardoned 17 people, and 3 of them I advocated for. So we know ultimately we paid a heavy price. It was very, very difficult, but it was worth it. We won. We won not only in the courts, but we got the Hammonds back home to their family. We got back home to our families, and my dad went back to ranching. And so, anyway, I'm going to kind of just this video. So when I came home, after being in federal prison for 2 years, I didn't want nothing to do with government. I even refused to vote. I just didn't want anything to do with it. And I talked a little bit about it here, and I'm going to play this video, and then we're going to take quite a bit of time here and talk about Idaho, what's happening in Idaho. In early of 2015, my family and I moved to Idaho. We did not know what the Lord had in store for us, but we had hoped that it was a life of peace and tranquility in a beautiful little town with wonderful neighbors. And then 2020 came around. The governor of Idaho, Brad Little, forcing innocent people to lock down in their homes, threatening force if they go to church. I don't want that to happen. I want Idaho to remain Idaho, free, because we need Idaho to be free. We need to have at least one state in this country that is an example of safeguarding American principles and liberty. There is only one elected position that can peacefully turn the totalitarian direction of the state around. That position is governor. If the people will get behind a governor that will not compromise, a governor who will not yield, a governor who has been through the fire and knows how to win, then through that position, the house of government can be cleansed and the purpose of the state can be restored. So today, I will repent of my refusal to vote. I ask you to give him one more chance with me. And together, let's keep Idaho, Idaho. Together, with the strength of the Lord, I believe we can keep Idaho free. Thank you very much. So let's talk about what we need to do to keep Idaho free. What we need to do to keep Idaho, Idaho. Because Idaho is in a battle for its conservative soul. And if you don't understand that by now, I don't know where you're at. And I hope that what I present here today will help you understand the battle that we are in and what we have to risk. Now, I have a video that this will be the first time I've showed it to anybody other than, we did send a link out and so forth as far as a town hall. And it covers quite a bit in a short amount of time, and I'm going to use that video to shorten my presentation down here because we took an hour presentation and put it into 5 minutes, and I want to show you. So hopefully you can hear this okay over there. I've got to exit out of this because I don't have it in the presentation. Ready? Idaho is in a battle for its conservative soul. Since 2015, over 248,000 people have moved to Idaho. Imagine adding a city the size of Boise to Idaho every 10 years. Talk about a challenge. And to make matters worse, approximately 36% of the people moving to Idaho are liberal-minded. They want desperately to change Idaho into a more socialist, progressive, woke place to live. Brad Little and the Republican good old boys controlling the Idaho House, Senate, and Governor's office for the past 26 years, being Republicans, you would think that Idaho would be the most conservative state in the country. But it's not. Here are some facts. As a state senator, Governor Little was the only Idaho representative to support gay marriage in the 2000s. In the last few years alone, Governor Little has increased Idaho's food stamp program by 24.2%. That's more than any other state in the country. Governor Little just recently dedicated $50 million in federal COVID relief funds to free government housing in Idaho. Governor Little also supported Obamacare and Medicaid expansion in Idaho. With Brad Little as governor, nearly 40% of Idaho's budget goes to state welfare. Why is this important for you to know? Because free housing, government welfare, food stamps, state-funded health care, and pushing the gay ideology have been the staple of the leftist agenda for decades now. And no person has moved that agenda more in Idaho than Brad Little. No wonder Idaho is in a fatal battle for its conservative soul. Idaho is not only #1 in growth and increased welfare programs, but during COVID, Idaho was also the first state to arrest pastors for holding church outside without masks. Idaho was the first state to arrest a mother for taking her children to the park. And Idaho was one of the first to raid businesses for not shutting down.
Just delivering this letter in response to you guys opening in contrast to the stay-at-home order.
Governor Little ordered
ordered Idaho sheriffs, city police, and Idaho State Police to arrest pastors, mothers, and business owners for not obeying his lockdown orders. Thousands of Idahoans were put out of business. Governor Brad Little simply does not understand the First Amendment here in Idaho. Religious liberties and the U.S. Constitution were decimated under Brad Little's orders. Now Brad Little is saying, I kept Idaho open. He is saying that his emergency declaration never violated or restricted any rights of Idahoans, never put Idaho on lockdown, and never allowed for mandates for masks or vaccines. If Brad Little's emergency orders never violated or restricted any rights of Idahoans, like he said, then why did police in Idaho strip the Bible from a pastor's hands, handcuff and arrest him for holding a church service? Why is an Idaho mother still being prosecuted today by the state for taking her children to the park? If Governor Little kept Idaho open like he said, then why were so many Idaho businesses categorized as non-essential and forced to close their doors? Why were so many people in Idaho arrested and prosecuted by the state for not wearing masks? And why did Idahoans lose their job for not getting vaccinated? If Governor Little kept Idaho open, then why did he implement a 4-stage plan to reopen Idaho? Governor Little is lying to us. He is a liar. And he must think the people of Idaho are so stupid that we will believe anything he tells us.
I never mandated masks or vaccines. We responded to a crisis with a balanced approach and kept Idaho open.
Because of politicians like Brad Little, we're losing Idaho to liberals. In short, Idaho is sliding down that path and becoming more like Oregon and California. You know it, you've felt it, and you've seen it. And I don't want to lose Idaho like the good people of Colorado lost their state. In November, we have a chance to stop Idaho's slide into leftist liberalism. We have a chance to stop the destruction that Brad Little and the Idaho establishment is bringing to Idaho. If we act now, we can keep Idaho's conservative foundation and enjoy the liberties that we want and need for ourselves and for our children. I'm Aaron Bundy, and I'm running for governor because I'm sick and tired of all the political garbage that's happening in Idaho, just like you. I'm tired of our freedoms being taken from us, and I'm tired of the liberal agenda being pushed from our Idaho capital. I'm tired of the waste and corruption that is in our state and federal governments. I'm running for governor to fight and win the conservative battle in Idaho.
All right, thank you. So let's get into this a little bit more here. I got to get out of this here though first. Got to get out of this to get into it. Okay. All right. What's that? Yeah. So we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. We're going to do some questions and comments and so forth. But I have another little piece that I think that you might find really interesting because you can see there, and hopefully that video is clear enough about what Brad Little did and what he's saying he did, which is two completely different things. And, you know, that statement is true. He must think the people, we are so stupid that we'll believe anything that he tells us. And I think the reason why he believes that is because he's got away with that so many times in the past. Because no matter what they've done in the last 30, 40 years, we've still gone down and voted R. We still went and put a check next to the R. And there's some things that are a lot different now. And that is the reason why we felt we should leave the Republican primary and get into the general election so that the people actually have a choice. Rather than a choice between a rhino and a liberal Democrat, they actually have a conservative choice. And so that's what we've done. That's why we're here today talking to you. So that was a strategy. That was a plan that we did. Now, I just want to make it really clear. This is the ninth section of the ninth page of the stay-at-home order, the lockdown order. And in here it directs, the director requests the sheriff and the chief of police in the state of Idaho and Idaho State Police to ensure compliance with and enforce this order. If there was any question of whether the order actually directed the policing agencies in Idaho, this should alleviate that question. That he actually directed the chiefs of police, the sheriffs, and the Idaho State Police to enforce his order. If you read the last line, the violation of any provision of this order constitutes an imminent threat to public health. Right here is the summary page of the order. And if you look here, he's saying, this order directs all individuals living in the state of Idaho to self-isolate at their place of residence. So he's telling you have to stay in your home. If you look down here, 3, directing businesses to cease operations if they're non-essential. Number 4, prohibiting all non-essential gatherings of any number of individuals, including churches. But let's go to the Constitution. What does it say about it? Maybe you've heard of something called the Bill of Rights. The very first line of the very first amendment, so the very first line of the Bill of Rights says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Yet we have officers in Idaho arresting pastors for organizing church service. Now, if there was any question about the Constitution in Idaho, I have one right here. I normally carry it in my back pocket. I want to read you it. Because in Article Section 1, or Article 1, Section 4, is titled Guarantee of Religious Liberties. The exercise and enjoyment of religious faith and worship shall forever be guaranteed, and no person shall be denied any civil or political right, privilege, or capacity on account of his religious opinion. And then if we go down to the 19th section, or we get here, towards the end, there's another part that says, and I think this is beautiful language actually, if I get there we go. It's titled Religious Freedom Guaranteed. And why they felt like they needed to add it twice, I don't know. But they did. And it says, it is ordained by the state of Idaho that perfect toleration of religious sentiment shall be secured, and no inhabitant of said state shall ever be molested in person or property on account of his or her mode of religious worship. And yet, in Idaho, we have this one. They're taking the Bible out of his hands so they put handcuffs on him. Now, yeah, shame on you. Every one of these officers took an oath to both of these constitutions. Both of them. Why did they take an oath? Why are they required to take an oath? What was the theory and the reasoning behind it? Anybody have an idea? What?
To protect the citizen.
Well, yeah, it was to protect the citizen.
But in the constitutional rights in the citizen.
Yeah, so go ahead.
The home's accountable for it.
Okay, there's that part of it too. Now, so you're both right. I'm going to give you another thought to think of. They took an oath to this, so that if anybody ordered them to violate it, they could say no.
That's right.
Right? They could say no, so it protects the right. And if they didn't say no, then we need to hold them accountable. But that is why they took an oath to it, to uphold it, to defend it against foreign and domestic enemy. So, what are these officers in Idaho doing? They are. And maybe they don't know better, but they should. They should know better. Okay? Now, we have to ask, and I think it's very clear, why are they doing this? Because of this order. He ordered them to do it. That doesn't make it right, but Governor Little ordered them to do these things, including arresting pastors for going to church, or for organizing a church service outside. So, now, there's another little piece of this, and then I want to answer any questions that you have, so be thinking about them. And I'll do the best I can at answering, honestly, and try to be precise in my answers. So think about them. Now, because I want to attempt to give Governor a little bit of slack here, a little bit of leniency. Now, you might not like that, right? But we're going to pretend. Let's pretend. Let's pretend that we're going to give him. Well, let's step back and try to say, well, let's look at this. Let's look at this. Kind of on an unbiased position. And let's say that maybe Governor Little was duped into the whole COVID stuff, and that he was really thinking that he was going to protect the health and safety of the people of Idaho. Let's just start from that position. So let's look at some facts. Who remembers when Governor Little put the state of Idaho in emergency status? Remember that? It was on March 13th, 2020, right? And he declared the state of Idaho an emergency. Now, it just so, remember, we're answering the question, did he do it for the health and safety of the people of Idaho, or maybe something else? Why did he do it? Because on that very day, on March 13th, that's the same day that President Trump announced that $50 billion would be given to states that were in a state of emergency. Okay, on March 13th. Now, you might be saying, well, maybe Idaho was in mayhem, maybe people were dying left and right. The problem with that is the governor's own website says that there was only one confirmed COVID case in all of Idaho on March 13th. See, right over there, March 13th? One confirmed COVID case. So, it doesn't seem like an emergency to me. However, in order to qualify for the federal funds, he had to be in a state of emergency. Now, you remember, I think it's 12 days later, he put the state of Idaho in extreme state of emergency. That would be on March 25th. That's when he issued the stay-at-home order, and when, we wondered whether we could step outside our house without getting arrested. Remember that feeling? So, let's look at that date, March 25th. Why March 25th? What was he doing? Well, March 25th was the same day that President Trump and Nancy Pelosi announced that states that were in extreme state of emergency could be receive part of this $2 trillion. But you had to be in a state of extreme state of emergency in order to qualify for it. Well, Idaho was put in an extreme state of emergency, and at that time we had 136 unconfirmed COVID cases. They didn't even supposedly know what it was. They called it the novel coronavirus, right? Now, as a little bit of a side note, I don't want to distract you much from what I'm saying here, but on March 19, 2020, did you know that President Trump outlawed the use of hydroxychloroquine for COVID?
Yeah.
I thought they didn't know anything about it. Now, hydroxychloroquine is proven to be one of the best remedies for COVID, and back in March 19, 2020, Governor Little outlawed it in the state of Idaho. Or excuse me, what did I say?
Not Trump.
I don't want to say Trump. Yeah, I went in and said it, and I didn't even know I said it. So thanks for correcting me. So Governor Little outlawed the use of hydroxychloroquine, and I think I could add to get the truth, because Trump was, remember, kind of talking about it, and it kind of an issue there. But then immediately, Governor Little outlawed it. Now, so there we have March 13th, right? We have the $50 billion from the federal government. We have March 25th. We have the $2 trillion from the federal government. And they had, in order to qualify for them, they had to be in these state of emergencies. Now, if you look here, Governor Little starts to say in his own words why he's doing what he's doing. He says here, securing millions of dollars in funds, and then he goes on some whereas and whereas. And then if you look down here, this section 46601, this is the authority that he's saying he's doing this under. I'm doing this under section 46601, which is a state statute. This is the authority. And here is a letter where he's thanking President Trump for $1.25 billion, and he's planning on getting more. This is very telling. Executive Order number 2020-07. So I'm going to read this to you if I could see it on this. Normally I read right off that. He says, this is the order. It says, I issued a proclamation on March 13, 2020, declaring a state of emergency in the state of Idaho. whereas I issued a proclamation on March 25th declaring a state of extreme state of emergency. And then he goes, whereas Congress has passed and President Trump has signed 3 legislative packages that provide state funding in response to COVID-19. Whereas I anticipate additional congressional action on federal relief packages to states regarding COVID-19. Here he goes, right? This is the second page. Now, therefore, I, Brad Little, of the Governor of the state of Idaho, do hereby order the creation of a COVID-19 Financial Advisory Committee comprised of members appointed by and serving at the pleasure of the governor. So what did he do there? He's getting all this money from the federal government. He's bringing it in, and then he got his buddies together. A handful of his buddies that he decides that he selects, and they serve at his pleasure and decide where this money is going to go. And then the last page says, for the coronavirus relief funds and other funds to be administered by the office of the governor. Now, how are the funds of the state supposed to be administered? That's right, by the legislature, right? So why the legislature? One is it's constitutional too, right? We give the legislature authority, but 2, yeah, they represent us. We all vote to send somebody that we trust, right? Quote unquote trust, and to go up there, and then there's a whole bunch of them. They all have to decide how the funds are going to be spent in Idaho. And that's so that a small group of people don't get control of it and use it to line their own pockets, their buddies' pockets, to abuse it, to waste it, and to keep their own power by controlling it, right? And to make sure that it's done the way that the people want it done. So do you see the problem with the governor and what he did? He got these billions of dollars from the federal government, and him and his buddies get to decide where they spend it out of the office of the governor, not the legislature. That's another branch of government that is not supposed to be able to decide where the funds of the state go. So,
are we able to track where it went?
Not completely. The recorder did, or the controller did a really good job with 1.25 billion, but who knows now where we're at with how much you've received. Yeah. So the last report that I'm confident in saying to you is $18.7 billion, but there is reports of 19.2, and I haven't confirmed that. So, but $18.7 billion. So now, remember that 46601, the statute he said that he was using the authority to do what he was doing? Let's go to that. If we look at this, look at the title. Title 46, Militia and Military Affairs. Chapter 6, Martial Law and Active Duty. 46601, Authority of the Governor. So what did he implement in Idaho? That's right. He absolutely implemented martial law in Idaho. Now look at section 2. It says, during a period of state of extreme emergency, which is what he put the state in, the governor shall have complete authority over all agencies of the state government, including all separate boards and commissions, and the right to exercise within the area all police power vested in the state. I'm going to read it again. During a period of state of extreme emergency, the governor shall have complete authority over all agents, complete authority over all agencies of the state government, including all separate boards and commissions, and the right to exercise within the area all policing power within the state. What do we call that form of government? Dictatorship. That's a dictatorship, right? Yeah, that's a monarchy. We do not believe in those in this country. We don't believe in those. We fought battles after battles. Our young men and our young women have died to prevent this type of action, and yet in Idaho for 721 days, I think it's over that actually, over 700 days he held us under this power. Now, I'm going to make you mad here. Because remember we were trying to answer the question whether he was motivated what motivated him to do this? Was it the health and safety of the people of Idaho? Or was it for something else? Yeah. Well, actually, on just last March 8, 2022, Governor Little came out with a press release, and he tells us. He says, the emergency declaration served as an administrative function to recoup FEMA dollars for a variety of needs throughout Idaho. He said, without the emergency declaration, we would not be able to provide historic tax relief, a step that is even more important now as gas prices and inflation soar. Without the emergency declaration, Idaho would not be the state with the strongest economy in the nation. Without the emergency declaration, the state of Idaho would not be able to provide Idahoans with historic tax relief.
Oh yeah, where is it?
But is this tax relief? Yeah. It doesn't even make sense, but he believes that the people of Idaho are so ignorant that he can pull this off. He didn't even tell us, and we'll still vote for him again.
Is he bonded? Because we're
Well,
still against his bond with all of this information.
So he should be, but let's not get into that. Okay? That's a whole can of worms there. But we can see right here now. Does he not tell us why he put us under emergency orders? He says the emergency declaration served as an administrative function to recoup FEMA dollars for a variety of needs throughout Idaho. He didn't say the emergency declaration served as an administrative function to protect the health and safety of the people of Idaho.
Yeah.
So he arrested pastors, mothers, put thousands of businesses out of business, destroyed lives, turned us upside down, put fear in us all over, whether we stepped outside or went to church. And he did it for what? He did it for federal money. That comes with tons and tons of strings attached to it, by the way. Right here, you'll find this interesting. Did you receive one of these? Did anybody get any money back from Governor Little right before the primaries? He says, listen to this, it's from Brad Little, and it was attached to a check. It was a relief, or what do they call it, a rebate, a tax rebate. He says, my fellow Idahoans, I can hear him saying that. The economy of Idaho continues to blow past projections, and we are leading the country in economic prosperity. We achieved historic tax relief for Idahoans for a second year in a row. We are returning your tax dollars with our record budget surplus. What period of time is he talking about when he says the second year in a row? 2020 and 2021. Isn't it an insult to our intelligence that he's saying that they amassed a surplus during the dark months of 2020 and 2021 when no one was working? The businesses were closed. Schools were not even, people weren't even going to school. And somehow he miraculously amassed a surplus in Idaho and created an economy that's stronger than any other time in Idaho history, according to his own words. Is that hard to believe? Hard for me to believe. But yet, what he's doing is he's saying, because I got so much money from the federal government, Idaho is in a good economic situation. Now, just so you know, he gave this money to people right before the primary. Now, did you know that he called a special legislative session just a few weeks ago? You remember that? And guess what was one of the main items on the agenda?
Bribery.
To do this again. Right before the general election. Right before the general election. So he's going to try to send a personal letter to all the voters of Idaho right before the general elections. That personal letter is going to be attached to a check. And so that everybody in Idaho thinks that Brad Little is so great, and the economy of Idaho is great. Yeah. But really what we did, I got you. Just give me a second. Really what he did is he put our children and our grandchildren in further debt that they will have to pay for. And if they don't pay for it, it'll put us through bloody wars in order to get out from underneath. That's what he did. He increased the national debt. And it's so interesting because in this here he says that, well, it's a good thing I did this because of inflation. Well, what do you think caused the inflation?
Inflation is a tax.
I mean, Isn't that crazy? And I'm showing you this. I'm not just telling you this. I am showing you the facts of what he has said with his own words. So now, talk about this same period. He's saying that during this period of time I amassed this great surplus. Well, look what world economists are saying. People like Adam Tooze. He says the impact of the pandemic on the U.S. and global economy was catastrophic. Economic historian Adam Tooze characterized its impact as being the swiftest and most comprehensive contraction of global economy activity ever. And yet, Brad Little amassed a surplus in Idaho. All right, and then if you want proof, right here, Governor Little's statement, he says, I kept Idaho open. Banned vaccine passports, never issued mandates for vaccines or masks. He says the emergency declaration never violated or restricted any rights of Idahoans. Never put Idaho on lockdown and never allowed for mandates for masks or vaccines. I don't know what Idaho he lived in.
Yeah.
Maybe for him, he felt free. He could walk around and do whatever he wanted. But I know the rest of us, you know, I know when I first had that first people's rights meeting in my old warehouse, we thought for sure we were going to get raided. We thought for sure that the police were going to come in and arrest us for having a meeting. And yet our constitutions are very clear that we have a right to assemble.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the reason for that is so that we can assemble and work out and grieve our government and do what we need to do to protect ourselves. And those rights were infringed upon. Pastors were arrested. Others are still today being prosecuted. Did you know that Sarah Brady still has not gone to trial, still has not been given a trial? Did you know that her legal fees are over $26,000 now? Because she took her children to the park and disobeyed Governor Little's orders. Businesses were raided, business owners were prosecuted. This is in Idaho. Yes.
I just got the latest on her. She had a hearing today.
Okay.
They were motioning her lawyers motion to dismiss. It's lasting about 1 hour, continue till next month, no decision.
That's what they've been doing to her. So she had a hearing today. They motioned to dismiss, and they pushed it off another month. What happened to speedy trial? Fair and speedy trial, right? That's a protection.
Absolutely.
And why was that protection in place? Because
tyrants like
that's right. Before the Revolutionary War, this is what they were doing to the people.
And should be prosecuted by the AG's office or a misdemeanor.
Yep, Attorney General's office is a special case. Her husband is a Boise PD officer as well. Okay, I have lots more information, but I'm not going to go into this because one, it's very difficult to talk about some of this. And ultimately, I want to give you a chance to ask me questions and to talk about this. I hope that by the time we leave here, we'll feel open enough and understand what we need to do. And don't let me leave here without giving you at least what I think we need to do when it comes to my campaign. I will just clarify one thing. Why would I run for governor? Why not legislature? Why not start here and work my way up? Why would I go for governor? Okay, there is a short time, absolutely. We have a short time to correct these things. That's absolutely correct. And I'm not a politician. I'm just not. I am not doing this because I want to do it. You know what I want to do? You know where I want to be? I want to be home with my family right now. I want to be home with them, enjoying them. I would love to go back to work. I haven't worked in 7 years. Like really went and worked and produced and made something. I haven't been able to. Ever since the Bundy Ranch, I have not been able to. And so I would love to go back and do that again. But I see a great danger that is facing us, that we must take care of before we go back to our lives. We must. Now, why governor? Because almost all of the abuses, the waste, the usurpations are coming from the executive bureaucracy. That's where they're coming from. And so the governor's duty is to make sure that those bureaucracies do not hinder and infringe upon the people's rights. That's their duty. So that is why a governor. So that I can go into these executive branches under these agencies, so that I can replace the heads of them, minimize their power, minimize their budgets, get rid of them if we need to. Did you know that, I'm going to show you, I showed this in the video, but I want you to see it, and then I'm going to answer questions. The Health and Human Services, mostly the Department of Health and Welfare, right now we're spending almost 40% of the state budget on welfare.
And we don't have an employee.
We need to correct this.
That's right.
The governor's job is to correct this. He's the one that is over the executive branch of government. And there are statutory things that he has to do, but the majority of what's going on is simply under the control of the governor. So now, I want to answer your question. Did you have something?
Yes, I do. You know me, I'm always interrupting you.
That's all right.
We're trying to take a drink.
Take a drink and bring it in. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Amy McCamley. Ammon is going to definitely answer your questions. I know this man, he will stay till midnight if he has to make sure that all your questions are answered. However, I know some of you have to get out the door. And before you get out the door, I need to express the importance of what support he needs. We've heard all the reasons why and why we want him. And now we have to understand the reason why behind this. So I moved here 2 years ago with my 2 daughters and my husband from California. I knew coming here this was a worldwide agenda. I jumped in and got involved right away. For those of you who know, I also backsaw Will Labrador, who's going to be our Attorney General. He's going to get out and vote for November. Woo! And so when I believe in a candidate, when I believe in a person, I put everything for it. And that is because my children's lives are at stake. And it's very rare that I will go in 150% for a candidate, because that's how important this is to me. So I've got 150% Raul, and that's why I spent a long time working on his campaign behind the scenes. And now I'm doing that for Ammon, and I just jumped in late to the game. He's got an amazing, amazing team. But I want you to hear my heart, because it's my hometown in Hayden and why I'm doing this. So years ago in California, my husband has followed Ammon since all the Nevada cattle ranching stuff. He followed the story, and he wanted to jump up and drive to Nevada. And having 2 little kids, I'm like, you are not leaving. But that is how my family is. We are people who stand up for freedom, no matter what state, no matter what country. You have to stand for what is right. And my husband knew if this was happening in Nevada, it's going to happen in California, everywhere else. And so I didn't let him go. And then moving here, he was very excited when he found out that Ammon was running for governor. Because again, following his story and see where he's at and what he's done since he's been here. Ammon can win. The only way he's going to win is if we get out to vote on voting day. We have to overwhelm the machines. So don't vote early. Tell your friends to vote in person, overwhelm those machines. That's the first thing. The second thing is, we have to start telling our friends, all these flyers and brochures and all that kind of stuff, you have to start telling people why you want this man. We know that we don't want little. We know that Ammon can't be bought. It's not a matter of if the federal government is going to come after us. It's a matter of when. They're already doing it. And this is who we need. And then the other thing is, it takes money. Whether we like it or not, it takes money. And I know everybody in this room has something to give, no matter how tight your budget is. And I know for me, my children's lives are priceless. That is why Brooke and myself and our team, we are working 24/7. Brooke's family, they were here Sunday night working from early in the morning because they own Lyfe, so Brooke and Dave own Lyfe. They were here early Sunday morning until late Sunday night putting on a freedom event. Dave and Brooke's family were early this morning, usually close at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They're here working tonight putting on a freedom event. It takes our time, it takes our money. So I am encouraging all of you before you leave, take an envelope, take your brochure. Do not leave tonight without giving something. Think about how many people are in this room. We each gave $100, $500, $50, $1,000. Everybody can give something different. Give tonight before you leave. Kathy, raise your hand, and Kara, everybody's in the back table, cash, check, charge, whatever it needs to be. If you've got to take it with you, but please give something, take extra envelopes, and give it to your neighbors and tell them, we have to get this man in office. And we've got to play their game, because how many big donors does Little have? A lot. But you know what? We're grassroots, and we know people who know people, and we can get him in office. So thank you guys so much for your time, and now we can do the Q&A.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, right here.
I've got a couple of friends that want to know how you feel about sales tax on groceries.
So how do I feel about sales tax on groceries? So let me, so I don't believe that groceries should be taxed. I think that it's one of those things that should be taxed. I do believe, though, that the only moral way to tax people is through a consumption or a sales tax. But I don't believe it should be on groceries. So you can tell them that that's my position. Absolutely. All right, right here.
What would you recommend I say to people that tell me they would vote for you, but they don't want to take the votes away from the Republican Party, and we get stuck with our Democrat?
Okay, well, you can start off with saying what we have is actually going to be worse than the Democrat nominee. Yeah. So, and there's lots of reasons I would say that. Basically, when Brad Little won the Republican nomination, there ended up being 2 Democrats in the race. And but let's go to the statistics, because there's I don't have internet here, but there's 136,000 registered Democrats in Idaho. There's about 1 million voters. And so you can see that already, but then there's about 300,000 unaffiliated voters. And there are Democrats that hang out in that category as well. So, but it's very statistically very difficult for them to win, even if we're splitting the vote with the Republicans. So there's that. Then also, maybe you guys know, but the Sandpoint mayor was supposed to be the Democrat nominee, and he messed up and filled out the paperwork incorrectly. And last I heard, which is actually a couple months ago, he was actually going in as a write-in. Is he still doing that? Does anybody know for sure? Because if he is, then they're splitting their own vote, right? So I'm like, yeah, great, do it. If they can't get on the same page, let him, he filled out the paperwork incorrectly. He thinks that somehow he can still pull this off, and so he's going as a write-in. Now, if that, I don't know for sure that that's still happening, but it was happening. If that happens, then they're splitting their own vote. But even if they don't, it's statistically very, very difficult for them to pull this off, even with the numbers they have. Now, where are the demographics? Where are the voting blocks for me? Well, why is it different this year? One is because I didn't get eliminated in the Republican primary. And see, that's the way the rhinos have been controlling this whole state. They get all the conservatives to run into the Republican ticket, and then they control the Republican Party and make sure that their guy is the only one that comes out of the Republican primary. And then there's no real conservative. The people have to choose the lesser of two evils and in the ballot box. Well, we saw that, and the good Lord put it in our heart to leave the Republican primary so that we can challenge Little in the generals. And that was something why we're here. Now, where are the voting blocks? Where are we going to get our support? What is happening in Idaho? Well, the primaries are the best poll that we have, because it was actual voting, right? And when you tally up all of the people who voted against Brad Little in the Republican primary, and then you tally those who voted for Governor Little, and then you take the Democrat vote out of the primary. There's about 36,000 Democrats that went and crossed over and voted in the primary, voted for Brad Little. If you take those out, the Republican Party is 50-50. It's right down the middle. Right down, it's fractured right down the middle. And the Republican Party right now is still doing that. What we just had, they had a couple months ago, they had a convention, right? Republican Party had a convention. They kicked their chairman out, who was Brad Little's right-hand man. And they put Dorothy Mooney in, right? So we're seeing something that we have not seen in Idaho in at least 4 decades. And that is, Republicans are making a decision whether they're going to be Republicans or conservatives. Because it's not always the same thing. And we know for sure that we are going to get a heavy support from members of the Republican Party. We know that. So so that's a huge voting block that we're going to get. They will not vote for Brad Little. They will vote for me, and we are very confident in that. Now, did you have a comment?
To her, just gonna say really quick. If you have a question, so that everyone can hear it, if you have a question, if you could just kind of stand maybe in line over here, that way I'll bring you the mic and everyone can hear your question and then he can answer it. Okay?
I'm fine with that. Okay.
Yeah.
So to her question, or what she was saying, that's how we have lost for decades, as we vote party. Well, we know that the GOP, if anybody's giving money to the GOP, they're wasting their money, because they always go for the rhinos. They don't put the money towards the people that are really the conservatives and the ones that we want. They do everything they can to crush them. So you vote for the good person, and you don't go party, because our party sucks. And until we actually get back in and get rid of the rhinos, then you're just throwing the vote away. Vote your conscience for the person. We know that Little's a snake in the grass. Why would anybody vote for him just because he's Republican? And you know that they put an R in front of their names because the Idahoans needed a C and R to vote for him. That's the only reason why they did that. But they were totally blue, and they were putting sheep clothing on. So the people that have come from other states, and we saw the garbage that we came from, and we see what's going on, we just got to wake these people up. And you vote for the person who is going to fight for us, that's already shown us that he's a fighter, and forget these people that are Republicans, because most of them have been stabbing us in the back. Look what they did to Trump for 4 years. I mean, come on. You know, we can overwhelm the vote by going in there and voting for the right person, and let the other 2 idiots at the top, you know, fight each other.
Are you going to ask a question?
No.
Let me respond. Because I wanted to, because I was telling you about the voting box. So we're going to get a huge amount of the Republicans. We already know that. This is what she was talking about. Look at the voting history of Idaho. We should be the most conservative state, but they're not. We're going to get the Republicans. Then there's about 300,000 unaffiliated voters in Idaho. That's quite a bit, and we know we're going to do very well in that category. We're going to get a lot of them to support us. And then we have the Constitutional Party and the Libertarian Party. We will do very well with them. And then also, we know that we're going to do very, very well with the move-ins, California move-ins. Like it or not, we're going to do very well with them. And you put those together, we need, Oregon, Washington, whoever. So, because a lot of people have fled other states to be here, and they don't want what's happening in their previous state to happen here. So those together, we're trying to get to that 300,000 mark. If we get that 300,000 mark, we win this election. Yep.
Next question.
This question is actually to everyone, and to follow up on what you said. I just learned tonight that the Kootenai County Central, the Republican Central Committee has decided to just vote down the ticket Republican. No. I'm so angry, that's why I'm speaking to you right now. So if you know any precinct leaders that are in that group, and any other way, the writing campaign, something, just, I wanted to help us put our thinking cap on what can we do about this.
The only thing I could say is, if you understand what Governor Little did to us, then it is immoral for you to vote for him. I mean, it's just, then you're only putting your party in front of freedom, in front of your children's liberty. It's just that simple. He cannot get away with this. If he does, what do we just tell him and all his buddies? It's okay for them to do that. And what do we expect Idaho to turn into? If we tell Governor Little and all his buddies that did these things to us in Idaho, we tell them it's okay, what do you think is going to happen to Idaho?
Good evening, everybody. So you commented here a moment ago on the unaffiliated, and I am one of those unaffiliated. I came tonight to check it out and to see how the crowd was, and I'll have to be honest with you, I haven't been treated very nicely. Quite the rude bunch back in the corner because I have a mask on. I suppose maybe somebody should say thank you because I do have COVID. So, you know, maybe stay 6 feet away from me, or, you know, at least say thank you that I have the mask on, but don't treat me rudely, please.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Guys,
Thank you.
thank you.
Do what's right for you.
Thank you. Yes. So, my next question is, with you as governor, can Idahoans look forward to more federal charges within respects to Idaho's women's rights, to our voting rights, to the new Sandpoint place that just got another federal charge whacked against them for collecting women's data on their reproductive rights? Where's your stance on that?
So, I'm going to refer to the Declaration of Independence. And I am certain, we know that when they're talking about men, they're talking about mankind. So I could say both men and women. And it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain and inalienable rights. So what I will do as governor is I will treat men and women equal.
I'm not sure if you quite answered that like comprehensively enough for me, but I guess we'll have to work.
Speak in the mic.
You let me know how I didn't answer it, and I'll answer it.
Well, you kind of just gave me a snippet of the Constitution there. I mean, I don't know how you personally feel about it. What are we looking forward to backing? Are you going to restore our abortion rights? Do you plan on not appealing?
You guys, be respectful and listen.
If you need my vote and you need other voters like me, we'd like to know the answers.
So that's a question. So abortion is not a right. Absolutely not.
No, it's not.
Life is a right. Life is a right. Your life is a right, and the life of a baby that's in the womb is the right of the baby. And so abortion is not a right. How do you claim abortion as a reproductive right? That's actually that's just opposite of reproduction.
What if I needed to take?
We're not talking about birth control. We're talking about
That's
conception.
what's up next in the Supreme Court.
So I believe that life begins at conception.
That's right.
And that it is the state's duty to protect life, including the most innocent.
Okay.
So that is what I believe, that life begins at conception, and that it is the duty of the state to protect that life.
Amen.
Okay, last question so we can get the other people in line here.
Right, so you clearly support the Bill of Rights. In the First Amendment, is that religion talk again? And as I spoke up when I first walked in, that it kind of goes both ways. You know, I don't tell you which God you worship, you don't tell me which God I worship. And those information should be separate from the Constitution, yet they are hardly blended right now. There's always been a separation of church and state.
No, let's and let her finish. And Ammon's going to answer.
So what's your question?
Until now.
It's not constitutional.
Are we not keeping it separate any longer? Are we just mashing it all together and we have to go with what the Christians want now?
No, it's constitutional.
Okay, what's your question? Okay.
There is no separation of church and state.
So I believe, as I very clearly, that liberty is the ability to do whatever you want as long as you do not infringe upon another person's rights. I believe that the freedom to worship is the ability to worship however, whenever, and whatever you want, as long as you're not infringing upon another person's rights. And I believe that it is also the people's duty and the state's duty to protect a person's right to worship, whether the majority of the people like it or not. The right to worship belongs to an individual. It was given to them by their Creator. And so to protect that right is the duty of the state, and it should be the duty and respect of all the people in a free nation.
But
So,
not to take our laws off. That's what I'm getting at.
I don't know what you mean by that.
Protect that right. To have the preachers tell the lawmakers what to do.
well, to influence the law, that's the right of an individual. That's the right of each citizen. To influence the law, as long as it is within the bounds of the Constitution. And the Constitution protects the freedom of worship.
So using religion.
I don't know what you mean by that. I don't know what you mean by
Using
that.
political influence.
Next.
I don't know what you mean by that. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
I do want to thank you for bringing those hard questions, because I wish more people would come to these kind of events that have hard questions. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you for taking time away from your family and from your work to be here tonight.
Thank you.
I am a healthcare worker, and my question is, what would you do to protect the healthcare workers and the people that you serve? During the pandemic, I could have easily been arrested for allowing husband and wife, patient and son, mother and father, son and father to see each other during a time that they were told that they had to be isolated and they had to be away from their families. And I morally and with every fiber of my being disagree with that. What would you do to protect the healthcare workers that fear for their jobs and are trying to do the best that they can to help the patients that they serve?
Kudos to you.
Very good. Thank you. So, what we saw during COVID and with the hospitals, and what fueled this terrible flame was massive amounts of federal money. To the tune of, as you know, if they were designated as a COVID patient, the hospital gets an extra $13,000. If they're put on a respirator, they get another, I think, $39,000. And then they receive just tons and tons of money through the governor's office or from the governor to comply to all the federal mandates. So it is extremely important that we sever this flow of money coming from the federal government down to the states. And because if we didn't have that, we probably wouldn't even known that, we wouldn't even cared about COVID. And so there are many other things, but we have to be very careful to not go and use the legislature to make a whole bunch of more laws that actually can be used by the bureaucrats to hurt us in other ways. What we have to do is stand on the constitutions, both our state and our U.S. Constitution, and we must stop this flow of money coming down that is changing all our institutions to try to posture themselves for federal money rather than to do a service that they were asked and paid to do for. And so, I see most of our problems during COVID happen because of federal money coming down into the states. So sever that. Absolutely sever that. So, thank you.
It's okay, we'll help.
Actually, Ammon, you just answered my question. I'm a nurse. I am a nurse. I moved here 3 years ago from California to get away from that bull. I moved to Idaho because I felt like this was a red state. I felt like we could do this. he just answered my question. I am disgusted about what I've seen, what I've witnessed. I've seen people die. I really have. People I'm close to. It's absolutely disgusting to me. Nurses,
I had to fear for my job just because I wanted
it was
to
a
help
fear,
people.
and I totally went away from that. I went to work for a morgue here when they bullied me to get the vaccine. I've been a nurse for several decades, let's say, and I went away from nursing because I was bullied. And I came here to Idaho from the godforsaken state of California because I thought this was a great state.
It is.
We got to get it back with this guy because there's no other hope.
Did you have a question?
I have no question.
Thank you so much, and we appreciate your service in the medical industry. All right, what's your question?
I don't actually have a question, and I apologize, but I did ask the lady back there if this was okay to say. Okay, so I am also a California refugee, and there was an Albertsons there that I found out that they were going to change it to food for less, which I did not want. So what I did was I made calls after calls after calls, found the VP of Marketing's phone number. So I went up to strangers, and the point of this is one way we could help him become elected. Because a lot of people don't know about him. So what I did was I got a little piece of paper, and I went in the grocery store, and I went up to strangers, and I said, do you know that they're going to change this to a food for less? And they're like, no, I didn't know. And I said, well, if it becomes a food for less, we have no more deli, we have no more meat counter, we have no more pharmacy. And they're like, no. And I said, well, if you don't want that to happen, call this number. So I just went, and people, the manager and the pharmacist and the people who work there thanked me after, because they said because of what I did, because I went in there like 3 times a week. And they said because they got so many phone calls from the marketing department that they did not change the store to food for less, and they closed other Albertsons and left ours alone.
That's awesome. Do you have a question?
So, I asked if I should say this. So she said she gave me the pile of cards. She says, okay, so everyone here can get these cards. When you go into your grocery store, you can say, do you know that there's actually a conservative person running? And do you know that Brad Little, everything he's done is not conservative, it goes along the Democratic Party? And they're like, well, I thought he was Republican. Okay, if you really want our state to stay conservative, vote for him. Take a pile of these, talk to strangers, because if you don't talk to strangers, people won't know about him, and they will think the only choice out there is to vote Republican.
Yeah. That's a really good point. So we are running out of time. Evan has to get over to the Health Freedom Idaho.
Right, so we're going to finish a couple more questions, but here's the thing. We all have these great stories to share, and I'm so appreciative, but we really want to be respectful of everyone's time and make sure we get everyone's questions. So when you come up here, if you can just do your 30-second soundbite, drill this man, ask your question, and let's move on so we can let everybody get a chance to get their questions answered. So here you go, Paul. And I know this guy, so I'll put the pressure on him.
2 questions. 2.5 questions. 1A. The police, the law enforcement officers arresting the pastor, were they police officers or were they sheriff?
They were city police.
Thank you. Therefore, Idaho Constitution, I think it's section 18, optional forms of government, and how it can affect, in our case, Coeur County elected officials. What is your opinion on that?
Getting back to the sheriffs, the sheriff is the highest
policing officer in the county. He's the only one that actually has a policing and arresting power in the county, and he can deputize, and it's so that the people have control of that. Like a lot of this, complaint of police abuse and all of that, and there is certainly some of that. There is certainly that, but we look at it and go, well, why can't we get a policing agency like a city policing agency that is abusing their power? Why can't we get them under control? Because there's no connection to the people in being able to elect that leader and replace them and get rid of that culture under that system, that municipality system. That's why our founders had sheriffs. And that's why they put in sheriffs, so that if the sheriff or his deputies are acting inappropriate, we can go in and get the sheriff out of there, put somebody in that we want, and change that culture. But you can't do that with the city police. You can't do that with the state police. You can't do that with federal police. And to be honest with you, be straightforward with you, city police, state police, and federal police are unconstitutional.
That's right.
They're just simply unconstitutional. There's no representation of the people, and there's no way for people to correct them. And so think about that a little bit. I'm not speaking out against policing agencies. I am stating the facts. That the people have the power. They give that power, the policing and arresting power, to a sheriff through an election. That sheriff deputizes his deputies, and that's how it stays in control of the people. When it comes to city police, state police, and federal police, you don't have that. They are unconstitutional.
Therefore, the optional forms of government possibly can, every 4 years, cause us to lose our elected sheriff.
That's right.
So that's my question, your position on that, and I think you answered it. My second question is this, is that there is a humongous, large bureaucracy in front of us, state bureaucracy, as well as local bureaucracy, okay? And we've all been told to begin at the lowest, at one of the lower levels. Fight at the city council, fight at the library board, etc., etc. Here's my question. Having done that, and having not receiving response from the governor's office when we are getting the runaround between state agencies, that we are fighting to keep our local city council honest. No response. How do you intend on overcoming the bureaucracy when you are in office?
Yeah, that's a heavy question, but so, I mean, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but we have basically gone back in many ways to a kingdom type government, and where you have these bureaucracies are basically like little kingdoms, and I mean, I don't want to I don't want to scare you away by this terminology, but this is the facts. For example, well, I could give you lots of examples, but the power right now is being held in the bureaucracies, like the department of this, the administration of this, and that's where the agency of this, the bureau of this, right? That's where the power is being held right now, and the heads of these agencies. When you talk about this deep state, this is what the deep state is. The heads of these agencies, when an elected representative comes along and says, hey, we're going to try to get control of this bureaucracy, they just laugh at them. It's actually a joke for them. I've seen it with my own eyes. They do not care. They are a power unto themselves. And again, that is the reason why I'm running for governor, because there's still this thought that the governor is the king. And he, like it or not. And there's still this thought, and it is so important that the governor goes in and cleans up these agencies, but you're not going to get just anybody to do it. It's going to be a downright fight. We saw this with President Trump.
That's right.
And so, anyway, I haven't really articulated it that great, but the threat and the power that is infringing upon our rights, that is threatening us, is found in the bureaucracies, primarily in the executive branch of government, and it doesn't matter if it's on a county level, a city level, county level, state level, or a federal level. And that is where the danger is. They're called bureaucrats. And I don't want to offend anybody by saying this, but what is a bureaucrat? It's a full-time government employee. That's what a bureaucrat is. And they are the ones that have been in their position so long, they become a power unto themselves, and they become very dangerous. They're not listening or adhering to the Constitution or to our representatives. Or to the people. They become a power unto themselves, and this has happened over and over again in history and societies and governments. This is not something new. This is what the king's officers are. They are the bureaucrats. That's what we are facing, and so it is a great danger, and that's why I hope that getting in the office of governor and minimizing the power and influence of the bureaucracies is something that we can do in Idaho to preserve Idaho and to preserve Idaho's conservative identity.
I just want to add something there. Local action equals national impact. And that is from the words of Mike Flynn. Local action equals national impact, and that takes every single person. So we're going to go ahead and stop after the fourth question. So just make sure you wrap up. Yeah, four. Right? Yeah, four. Yeah. So after, yeah, do you have another? So after you, we'll go ahead and end it. So just make sure to wrap up your question in about 30 seconds, and we will continue. Thank you.
Alrighty, so I work in the medical field, and I worked on the COVID unit for a long time, and what I saw there was a lot of malpractice, and to be pretty straight up, premeditated murder.
That's right.
What will you be doing as governor to hold the hospitals and doctors accountable for all the malpractice?
So murder is illegal in Idaho. Did you know that? I think if there was, if that truly was going on, and I believe it was, that the laws of Idaho already are in place to penalize that, to prosecute, to go through the things that, but we need to do that. We have all these tools that are being used against the people. The tools of prosecution, the tools of incarceration that are being used against the people, but not against the institutions.
That's right.
And so we have to implement our laws. If there was intent to kill, then our state should go into action and prosecute and go through the penal systems. There's that. There's also this money. If you're talking about government money, going into like a hospital, which a lot of government money goes into hospitals, then who are those hospitals accountable to? They should be accountable to the people, right? That is the people's money. And that is part of the duty of government, is to make sure that those funds are administered correctly, that they're administered according to what the people want them administered. And so if they're going to take money from the government, then they need to understand that the government is going to make sure that they're not killing people, that they're not violating people's employment contracts, that they're not firing people for discrimination. Those things are, and we just simply have seen no leadership on that on any level when it comes to the state, when it comes to the governor. So
are you saying you would initiate that?
Absolutely, I would initiate that.
All right.
Absolutely. And I don't believe that we need I don't believe we need new laws to do that. I've been in this argument with people that we need to get the legislature to enact new laws. We don't. We have good laws. They just need to be enforced. We have a good constitution. It just needs to be enforced, both in the state and in Idaho.
Thank you. I have to add something to that. Who was at the Reawaken tour this weekend? Awesome. So I got a quick moment to talk to Thomas Renz. If you don't know who he is, renz-law.com. I asked him that exact question because I've actually personally had 2 friends murdered in the hospitals, put on remdesivir and put on respirators. Okay, so he said it's very, very hard to prove intent. from the nurses and doctors. So we may have to find a different way to do that, which I thought was very interesting. So, you know, we have to keep fighting and digging and finding out how to hold them accountable. But he said that is a very tough one because the doctors and nurses can just say we were following hospital protocol, which was put in place by Dr. Fauci, which a 54% mortality rate in a study in Africa was remdesivir, 54% mortality rate, and he bought all that there was in the entire world and brought it to the United States. And that is why we had, as the wonderful rich country that we are, the highest death rate in the world. Okay, that is why.
So just as a follow-up then, to enforce it right away, do I need to call like the police when I see it happening? Is that a way just to get it done right on, you know, on the spot?
Sure. You can file a complaint in the courts.
I would every day.
And imagine what this little person could do if she was to do that.
I would every single day.
I mean, if she was to expose and to stand out and do those things, it would be amazing. And we need to do it. We have to do it more. We have to be able to say, this is wrong, and I'm not okay with it. And even if I lose my job, even if I lose my income, this is wrong, and I'm not okay with it. And there's a lot of messed up things in the courts. They are completely messed up right now. But their design is so that we can go to them when we see something wrong. We can make a complaint. We can try to correct these things peacefully, even though they're not really functioning that way right now. That is really what they're for, and we should try to use it for that. So.
Videotape everything.
Yes.
Okay, next up, protection against retaliation.
Ammon, I'm from a law enforcement family, and I think you explained a little bit of it, but how can you and will you step in with the city police? What can you do when they're acting unconstitutional?
She's the sheriff, not the city police.
So it is very, very difficult because it is unconstitutional. It's extremely difficult. Who do you elect in? The governor? You didn't. The mayor doesn't have policing and arresting power. So, but somehow the mayor hires the chief of police, and the chief of police then somehow automatically has policing and arresting power. That's not directly connected to the people at all. It's very, very difficult to get this situation corrected. You can use the courts. You can use a bully pulpit. You know, there's things that you can do, but they're not like direct, let's get this guy out, let's correct this. They're not. Now, with that being said, I think I'll take the opportunity to let you know that I have actually made an oath to the policing agents, the policing officers in Idaho. And that is that as governor, those who uphold their oath of office and who choose to, disobey an order because they're upholding their oath, I, as a governor, will defend them. I will defend them both legally, politically, and physically if needs be. And the reason for that, thank you. The reason for that is because we need to change the culture, right? Imagine, because right now, a police officer goes out and he's told to go arrest the pastor of this church because they're having church against the governor's lockdown orders. Well, what happens if he says no? He's either put on, disciplinary action or he loses his job. So he's having to make a decision. Am I going to pay the mortgage or am I going to uphold my oath? Well, I don't think they should be in that position. And I think the state, including the governor and the attorney general's office, should protect an officer that upholds his oath of office, and even if he's in disobedience to his superior. And so that's why I made that oath. So. Well, healthcare workers don't take an oath, but not to the Constitution. Not to the Constitution. I totally agree with that, but so. Well, yeah, I know. I'm talking about to the Constitution. I should have emphasized that. So you take an oath to the Constitution. Yeah. I think the state should protect you. Absolutely. If you go and say, look, they're killing people in this COVID unit, and you bring that out, you're the whistleblower in that, you should be protected by the state. Absolutely, you should. So, thank you.
quick follow-up. I received a video today that was about defunding the police, a video of yours, and just being from a law enforcement family, I don't think I would defund the police. I would defend them. However, I think that there should be some reform.
Yes.
So how do you feel about that now? Thank you.
So, when I did that video, because you might run into it. When I did that video, it was long before the whole defund the police would become this, conservative, liberal thing. And if you go in and you watch the whole thing, you'll see that I drew the strong conclusion that of who is going to be the ones taking our rights away if it's going, if it happens. Is it going to be Black Lives Matter? Because I'm not afraid of them. I'll defend myself against them any day of the week, right? I'll defend myself. Antifa, I'll defend myself against them. I'll take up arms. I'll defend myself again. Is that who's going to take our liberty away when they come to take it? Or is that who's been taking our liberty away? No. Who's been taking it away? It's been the policing agencies, the policing officers. And that's a hard thing for us to say because we want to support them. And so, I look at law enforcement and government in general the way that George Washington explained it. It's like a fire. It's like a fire. It can be a terrible master or a useful tool. And that we use fire, right, in our homes to heat our homes. We use fire to cook our meals. We use fire for comfort, even for light in certain cases. And it's a useful tool, but it also can be, we see how the fires are out of hand, out of control. And it can be a terrible master. What's the difference between an out of control fire and one that you use for like a forest fire and one that you use to cook your food? What's the difference?
Control.
You're controlling it. And so that's what I was meaning. We have to control the bureaucracies, including our policing agencies. And one of the way that we control an out-of-control bureaucracy is what? By the money, by the funds. By the funds. So if you have an out-of-control policing agency or an out-of-control bureaucracy, it is the duty of the legislature, of Congress, to minimize the funds of that agency. That is why Congress has the power. That's why the legislatures have the power. And that, I was explaining that, but I used the defund really before it was ever like this keyword, defund the police and so forth. And so people have keyed in on that and have tried to use that against me. So it is what it is, but that's my intent, and I stand by it. It is a tool. We must keep even our policing agencies under control. If we don't, there will be that terrible master that George Washington talked about.
Okay, last question here. Oh.
Yes.
What's that?
What's your time frame?
Yeah, I'll give you the two.
The two? Okay. Okay, so last two, here you go.
Thank you. First, a comment. Thank you for running because I was making the repugnant decision to vote for a Democrat over lying little, and now I don't have to. So thank you for that. Yes, and so you've talked about the swamp. The Idaho Constitution says that we can only have 20 executive agencies, and last time I counted we're just under 200. So I want to personally volunteer for the task force to start axing those. So just put my name down on that. So my question is, you've been really clear about government abuses during COVID against individuals. I specifically want to know about private businesses' abuses of freedoms and liberties on the individual, because private entities were also doing what government entities were doing in regards to employment and health freedom and different things like that. So I'd like your comments on that, please.
All right, so rights are the same no matter what, right? Whether they're your rights. But a private entity is not the same as a government entity. We recognize that, right? They're not the same. How do we talked about correcting the government entities, the government institutions that infringe upon our rights. There's ways to do that, and I think we've covered that. So, private entities. Can we use the same things to apply to private institutions? as we do to government institutions? We can't, right? We can't, unfortunately. And a lot of people have a problem with that. They have a really hard time understanding that you can't use the same mechanisms that our founders put in the constitutions to control private companies. Otherwise, if you do, you're infringing upon liberties. Because
But didn't liberty, the definition of liberty that you gave us was that one, I'm going to say entity instead of individual, one entity cannot infringe upon the rights of another entity. So let's take the word individual out of it if you want to.
No, I don't want to. You can't take individuals.
You don't like that they've made corporations individuals? That's what we operate under, that legal system.
They're persons, you're right. You're person, a
Right.
person is, yeah.
Right.
So ask your question.
Well, I'm just
I
clarifying terms. I'm clarifying terms because they're very important, because they're always twisted
That's correct.
to finagle their way through stuff.
That's correct.
So, I'm sorry, continue.
Yeah, well, let's break this down, okay? So, are you talking about like corporation, private business, doesn't matter?
Isn't a corporation and private business the same thing? It doesn't matter how it's written. We have laws like I heard her just say, like HIPAA.
So
how does that not violate laws we already have? And so what I'm basically asking as an
If you believe
executive,
HIPAA is constitutional.
I don't believe a lot of
It's not.
stuff. It doesn't matter. It's the law we're operating under.
I understand that, but we have to go back to the Constitution or it never makes sense. Okay, so
my direct question.
Okay.
If I worked for Home Depot, it was the only way I feed my family of 4, and they said you must provide proof of vaccination for the newest thing coming next year, or you will be fired. Would you protect me against that infringement upon my entity or not? Amen.
So let me answer that because you're not going to like my answer.
Yes, go right.
But I want to know what it is. I want to know too.
I will. And it's very difficult, right? Because I've been a business owner, right? And if my employee comes in and or let's say I see a need to implement something in my business, okay? Whatever it is, I see a need to implement.
Whatever it is?
Well, I'm not saying whatever it is.
Can you force a woman to have an abortion?
No,
or just because your personal beliefs, you won't do that?
Okay, that's a really good point. Okay, so let me answer this because we've got to get through this. So, can I force a woman to have an abortion? Absolutely not. I cannot force a woman to have one. I cannot drag her in the back room and force her to have an abortion because that's her decision.
Oh, what about jabbing something into my body?
Okay, I cannot, as a business owner, drag a person in the back room and force an injection in them.
Why?
Okay, but you can force them to pick between their livelihood or starving.
So, but however, I can, and I have to be able to say, you have to do this or you're not going to be employed. I have to be able to do this.
On anything.
Yeah, I mean, because whose business is it? Whose business is it?
Shareholders.
Well, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when I have a business, right? See, because if you regulate corporations, then you regulate the individual business too.
Why?
You guys, businesses have a right to do that. Disneyland
It's hard
has
to understand that.
a strict image takeover.
So listen, let me tell you what your right is. Let me tell you what your right is. Your right is to decide whether you're going to work for that business or not. That's your right. Let me answer. It is not your right to be employed. Okay? It is not a right to be employed. That is a privilege. It is not your right to be employed.
This exact argument is used to implement government mandates onto the population without it being government mandates.
I understand, but the
suing companies now
so
too.
let me answer this. Let me get to this. So that's because the employees don't say no.
Well, I don't have to worry about it. I'm not employed by you.
I'm just saying
There's a lot
that,
of
but I'm saying it's a hard thing But if we're going to stand on principles and principles of the Constitution, you have to understand what a right is and what a privilege is.
How about
It is
everyone-
not your right to work for somebody else.
Okay, how about the pensions? People work their entire life and are on pensions from these people that they work for, and they want to implement anything like that. You're
That's-
saying that's perfectly cool?
That is a contractual thing.
Yeah.
And if they
So,
violate a
employment.
if they violate a contract, then you have every right to challenge them in the courts.
A lot of
You have
employment
every
is
right to go in. That's right. That is a contractual thing.
Now, what if you want to mandate your religion or your right to bear arms as a condition of employment?
You have a right. It is not a right to be employed.
Okay.
You have a right to say, I'm not going to work for that business because they mandate or they won't let me exercise my Second Amendment or whatever else. You have a right.
Do this. What do you do about it?
What's that?
What happens when all the businesses do this? Well, I left a state where that happened.
This is what the.
So let me give you a statistic. Did you know the term? I am.
The answer sounds like nothing.
What do you mean?
If all the businesses
If I-
mandating things like the vaccination.
That's not a practical question.
It happened.
No, it didn't happen.
It's happened.
Guess what happened? Guess what? Guess what happened in my little town in Emmett? There was a lumber supply company who stood for liberty and protected their rights of the of the individual that didn't mandate, didn't do anything, wouldn't do that, right? And then across the valley, there's a Home Depot that is doing that. I, as a customer, have a choice. I'm going to go support that business. I have a choice as an employer. I'm going to go to that business. Do you know that there was hospital chains that refused to mandate vaccines, that refused to take federal money? Did you know that even in Idaho? Well, guess where? Well, I wouldn't say thousands, but hundreds of nurses and doctors fled to those hospitals.
That's right.
And if we mess that up, if we mess this balance up,
It's already messed up. Corporations are becoming more powerful than governments. Try doing
That's
that.
only one thing.
the government, now when the government gives a corporation or an institution a privilege over others, that is the duty of a governor to stop that. That we must stop, right? But we cannot implement things that will actually crush free trade. Did you know, what's the definition of,
Free trade.
what's the definition of socialism? What's the definition of socialism? Do you know?
We don't have free trade.
What's the definition of
We
socialism?
live under a fascist economy right now.
Okay, and why? What's the definition of socialism?
Between government and corporations.
It's not his.
Okay, I asked the question, I'll answer the question. The definition of socialism is the government controlling the means of production. That's our businesses.
And distribution.
That's correct. So what you are saying right here, if I understand, you are basically asking me whether I am going to implement socialism.
No.
And the answer is absolutely not. I will not allow the government to control the means of production and distribution. Will not.
The back door by this exact argument. Stop spending money.
Then don't go to those businesses.
That's right.
Don't support them. But guess what happens? We all go to Costco.
Yeah.
I don't either. I don't go anymore. But, they let us go in with masks now. We forget what's going on. We go right back in there, right? That's what's happening, and that's why they get away with it. It is the people, if the people would punish them through free trade, then we would correct these issues and the government wouldn't have to get involved. So, like it or not, that's my position.
Have you ever all heard of Patriot Switch? That's somewhere that you can go and purchase what you purchase elsewhere. Made in America. Anyway, I don't have a question for you. This is a correction of what I said. I want to honor the person who asked me to correct what I said about the Republican committee here. The verbiage, what they're going to put out has not been finalized yet. They are only going to publish who they support, their endorsement of local candidates, but their actual publication, what they're going to put out, is not settled yet. So I just wanted to thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your patience and me trying to explain and get through that. Hopefully I did answer your questions. I think you know where I stand. Might not like it, but that's where I stand. So I want to just close this up by going over the 8 planks of the Keep Idaho, Idaho plan. Number 1, protect private property. Number 2, eliminate progressive taxes. Number 3, free Idaho from federal control. Never talked for hours on that one. Number 4, make Idaho independent again.
Yeah.
You know Idaho hasn't paid its own bills in 38 years.
Take our land back too.
Look where our money's coming from in Idaho. Let's see what's going on here. There we go. Well, this is our revenue coming. So from the general fund, that would be income taxes and other taxes. Dedicated funds would be like our fuel tax, dedicated for a purpose. Over a third of our budget comes from the federal government. So taking back, or making Idaho independent again.
That's right.
Number 5, bring back the rule of law. Number 6, make Idaho an economic powerhouse.
Yeah.
Why not? We're not called the gem state for nothing. They don't call Treasure Valley because everybody's on welfare. At least we don't want them to. Number 7, secure the quality of life for every Idaho family. And number 8, make Idaho an example of peace and prosperity to the rest of the world. I'm going to remember. Thank you for your time and thank you for your questions.
All right, everyone, thank you so much. My husband Dave Miller and I are so honored to host this tonight, and thank you for showing up. We all have busy lives. We have 5 children. They're all going to a million different places. I have my 5 Beaumont stores. We have the Lyfe coffee shop, but nothing is more important than freedom. If you were at the Lee Dundas last night, she made a comment that said, our freedom is even more important than family, and that may sound weird to you, but without freedom, we don't have our family. If you look into history, those family members were taken away on trains. We have to have freedom, then we can preserve our families and everything else. So stand up, speak out, and show up, and you guys all showed up tonight, so thank you so much, and come back and have a good coffee sometime. And lastly, please donate. We've got to get this guy in office. I know everyone can give a little bit. It takes money. You know how much George Soros donates to fight people just like him. So we all have to put our money where our mouth is and donate something. We can't just be the people that sit around and complain and do nothing. Dig into your pocketbooks, write a check, Venmo, whatever you have to do. We have to bring money into this campaign in order to win it. As sad as it is, that is the way it works now. So donate your money to get Ammon into office for governor. Thank you. Up in the front, Dave, wave your hand up there. That's Dave Miller, the co-owner with myself here. That is where you donate, up there at the tables. You will see it at the exit door.
We don't call special
That's me. I work both.